Hello people, welcome to Green Bionomy. Here we're trying to help you to grow more healthy and local food, and if you're a farmer, have more profitable operations, and basically try to empower people to build a more sustainable and regenerative future. So start locally, and if you're hardcore, go global. This video is about hydroponic substrates. So substrate is basically the material in which the roots of your plant will grow. And so it's a fancy word, substrate, but it's just a growing medium, or naturally that will be soil, right? So in this video, we're going to see what is it, why is it important, why do the plant need it, and what are the most common substrates that are used in hydroponics. So we'll review 3 of them, that was 2, Coco coir, Rawwool, and expanded clay pebble. And for each of them, we'll see what are the disadvantages and what are the advantages, and also what it is, basically what type of material it is. So by the end of the video, you should be able to make your choice and go and build your systems and change the world. Yay! Alright, let's get started. Alright, comparison of 3 hydroponics growing media. Growing media is the same as substrate or growing medium, whatever you call it. That's what the plant used to grow in. So first is Rawwool, then clay pebbles, and the third one will be Coco coir. So in this first part, we'll review the basics of substrates, so just to understand what we are talking about and lay a foundation. Now, a substrate, what is it? So it's basically the material to which the plant's roots attach themselves. So you can see this little illustration. You have a plant, a rock. The plant uses the rock as a certain structure to attach its roots and hold itself upright. But there are other reasons why substrates are important. Okay, so now because we're talking about hydroponics, the substrate we will be considering are not soil. So naturally it will be soil, but in hydroponics we're not talking about soil, we're talking about other materials. So why do plants need a substrate? So the first thing is it brings structure, right? And these structures have a lot of benefits. So the first is the stability, so the most basic thing. But then this structure, depending on how it's set up, it will affect the aeration as well as the drainage, and these two together affect the moisture levels around the roots, which is very important for plant health. Now, where does the plant get the substrate? So as I said before, the natural way is soil. And in this illustration, you can see if we zoom in, what we'll have are, well, the soil particles, then there will be the root of the plant, some air gaps, some nutrients that are at the surface of the particles, as well as some water in the gaps and on the particles. So you have all of these around the root, and that's basically what the root and the plant ultimately will use to live and survive. Now, in hydroponic, you are the one choosing. So you choose the material that the plant will have at its disposition. That's why it's kind of an important choice. And here you can see that's a hydroponic system. So this type of system is a Kratky system. There are many types of hydroponic systems. And again, here you will have a substrate, but it's not soil. Here we're using clay pebbles. That's one of the substrate or growing media we will be viewing in this video. So you will also have your air, your nutrients, and your water. Okay, so now you know what is it, why do the plant need it, and where does it get it. Let's move on. So in the part 2, we're going to see the 3 common substrates that I showed you before in the first slide. The first one we're going to review is Rawwool. Okay, so Rawwool, what is it? So it's basically melted rocks with that is mixed together with cotton candy-like fibers at very high temperature, and then they're pressed down into cubes to give this certain structure. So, well, I struggled a little to get the right color with the watercolors, but this is how it would look in an illustrated way. But you can just Google it and see some pictures. There's a bunch of them, and probably if you already have experience with hydroponics, you already saw and manipulated Rawwool. Now let's see what are the advantages of this medium. So I will be using substrate, growing medium, growing media, interchangeably. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but they're all synonyms, so it's just the same thing. It's the material in which the plant will grow. Okay. So advantages of Rawwool. So the first is it's durable. It can last up to several years, and then it have a good water retention and a good root aeration. That's why it's one of the most popular one. Especially you can start seeds directly in it, and that's very convenient because then you don't have to transplant the seedling into another system or growing medium. So it's very good in that way, and it's reusable, but only if you don't have any issues with disease and you wash it between the use. Okay, so this kind of makes sense. So then the disadvantages, the first is it has a naturally high pH. It is alkaline, and this is due to the bonding agents that are used during the manufacturing process. So when they're mixing up these melted rocks and cotton candy-like fibers, they're using some agents for everything to stick together, right? And this increases the pH. So that means that you have to soak it before you use it to reduce the pH level so that your plant can thrive in the Rawwool. So the way you'll do that is that you will make an acidic solution with a pH around 5.5, and you will just put your Rawwool in it and wait. Well, I'm not remember exactly how long, but it can be from a few hours to up to a day, and then you will put it out and let it leach out, like all the water out, so that the pH will be reduced. Now, even though you do that, once your system is running, there is still a chance that the Rawwool throw off the balance of the pH in your solution, and that's one of the disadvantages, because then it increases the needs for monitoring, and well, it's a bit also like it's a bit stressful. You know, you never know. You'll always have to check the pH to ensure that it's at the adequate level. Now, another big one that kind of made me biased against the Rawwool, which for me, starting out, I'm like, okay, I don't even want to deal with it anymore, because I prefer to start out with something that is directly biodegradable or that is environmentally friendly. Because this manufacturing process, when they make the Rawwool, that basically takes natural materials and then make it into something that is not biodegradable, that will end up ultimately in the landfill. So I don't really like that. And also, these bonding agents and the way they manufacture it, and especially the very thin fibers that are used, that gives this wool effect to the Rawwool, they can end up in your lungs, in your eyes, and in your skin, and all of that causes a certain irritation. Now, that being said, I think this happens only when you use it a lot and you're always surrounded by Rawwool, because having seen people manipulating it and using Rawwool, well, it doesn't seem to cause massive problems, but it's more like, I think if you use it a lot, you need to be careful about that and wear some protective equipment. But again, I think it's only if you manipulate a lot of it. But personally, I prefer to just go and start out with something else, that even if I jump into a swimming pool of it, there is nothing happening to me. You know, I prefer to be into something that's from the start is in harmony with my values. And here on this channel, well, the point is to try to build a more sustainable and regenerative future. So for me, Rawwool is a big no-no, but then it has its advantages. So go and check it out and try it. Maybe you will love it. Okay. So now let's check out the clay pebbles. So again, what is it? So clay pebbles is basically kiln-fired clay pellets. So a kiln is just like a fancy oven. So in these illustrations, I wanted to make apparently it's a very old technology. So that'll be like the old school kiln. But now I think they're using these very fancy, sophisticated kilns. So they take the clay pellets, they put it in it, and then this process makes the pellets expand, and that creates these tiny air pockets you can see in the clay pebbles, and that's also why you call them expanded clay pebbles. So it comes also in different sizes, from 1 to 18 millimeter, and that's pretty much how it looks. Now let's see what are the advantages of this media. So first is the good ventilation. So obviously it's these spheres with air pockets, so air circulates very well in it. And then you also have the good drainage that goes with the good ventilation. The pH is neutral, so contrary to Rawwool, you have a neutral pH, so it doesn't throw off your balance. It doesn't compact because it's solid, so that's really helpful if you have a stacked up system. It's durable, so you can use it several years, and reusable. But again, if there's no disease issues, and you wash it between the use. Now the disadvantages is, well, it kind of goes with the advantages of good drainage and good ventilation. It has poor water retention, and that means you should use it with a system where there is a frequent irrigation cycles, otherwise your plants might just dry out and die. Then there is the risk of clogging because it has these dust particles. So when you open the bag for the first time, usually you'll have these like tiny, like sandy clay particles that are in there. That's why you need to wash it first, because otherwise this can go in the water and clog your pumps and system. It also have this nutrient coating, so that's related to something called cation exchange capacity. So I have a whole video on that because it goes a bit in the details, but basically some nutrients will have a tendency to go and stick at the surface of the clay pebble, and that's why when you use it, it will tend to develop this nutrient film around it. So when you want to reuse it, you should wash it between the use to remove that coating. So this coating, if you're not careful about it, it can create an imbalance in your nutrient solution. So the solution for both, for dust particles and the nutrient coating, is just to wash the media. And finally, it's heavy, so that's the downside of the no compaction advantage. So it's solid, but therefore it's heavy. So you need to take that into account based on the structure that will be supporting your hydroponic system. So now let's see Coco coir. So that's the last one we're going to review for this video. So Coco coir, so what is it? So it's basically a fiber. So, and it comes from coconuts, right? So here is the coconut, so that's the part you usually hear about and you probably enjoy. That's the coconut meat, that's what you want to eat. And now you have the outer shell, and here, in hydroponic, the part we're interested about is the middle part, so between the inner and the outer shell, the coconut husk, okay? So this husk, that's a byproduct of the coconut industry. So when they are processing everything to kind of like take out this meat and water that you enjoy, well, the husk is something that is usually thrown away, but it ends up that you can use this husk to create a hydroponic medium. So when they take the husk and they grind it up, you end up with this Coco coir. So now it has different advantages. So the first is the air to water ratio. That's something very important because, well, you want the roots of the plant to have oxygen and to also have a certain moisture level. So good air to water ratio, then has a long lasting structure. So that means the way the fibers are arranged, which is what gives it its good air to water ratio. Or if you don't go and just damage it and hit it against things, well, it should keep this structure for several years so you can reuse it. Then it's also biodegradable. That's a very good point, especially for me. I care about that. That means once your system is done, or if you want to change your material, you can go and compost it, for example. So that means you can really link your hydroponic system to other more organic systems, okay? It doesn't have to stay entirely artificial. That's kind of bring hydroponic also closer to organic style of growing plants and caring or managing organic matter. It's also renewable. Well, it comes from the coconut, so that's very cool. And it's an upcycled material, so that's very strong aspect in the concept of circular economy. Downcycling, it's like when you take a book and then you reuse it and you make toilet paper with the paper. That's downcycling. But here we take the husk and then we create something that has more value, which is a growing medium for hydroponics. So it's being upcycled. So that's also really cool. And it's a natural growing medium, obviously, and this gives it abilities. The first is it can be inoculated with beneficial microbes. So again, that goes back to being able to link it to other systems. Let's say you have a vermicomposting system. So I have a video about that. That's when you do composting by using worms, and these worms, they produce vermicasting. That's basically their poop, but that's very rich in beneficial microbes that works well with the plants and help them grow and thrive. So that means you can add that to your hydroponic substrate and basically mix up this artificial style of hydroponic with a more organic style of growing plants. So I really like this, and it has natural anti-fungi properties, so disease resistance is also something that is not negligible. Now let's check out the disadvantages of Coco coir. First, the high water retention. So that's one of the downsides of it. It will tend to suck up water. Well, when you think of the natural conditions of coconut, it's around sea, water, etc. So if you need to consider that when you choose your system, right? If you have a system where there's frequent irrigation cycles, then that might not be the best. Like in that case, expanded clay pebbles will be better. But if you have systems where you want moisture to stay for a long time between irrigation cycles, because there's fewer of them, then Coco coir become more interesting. Okay, so high water retention. So if you're not careful with that, the roots of your plant can drown or rot, and the plant will eventually die. Then it has high salt levels. So this whole salt business, I haven't understood that in depth yet. So that's something I will be researching later and make a video about it. But now I saw that's one of the problems you can have with it. And this basically creates salt buildup once you use it again and again, right? So you will see that on your equipment, and it will start building up, and that clogs the pump and creates some issues for you. And eventually also it can be bad for the plant if there's too much of that. So the solution here is, for the equipment, you should wash it between the use, so it requires flushing. And for the Coco coir itself, you should soak it and leach it between the use, or even before using, to reduce the salt levels. Or you can also get apparently there's some Coco coir that have lower salt levels from the start because of the way they process it, or it's higher quality Coco coir. So you can look for a supplier that have low salt Coco coir. But again, this part I didn't understand it fully. So well, if you have some tips or some information that I should know, just let me know in the comments, and I will also make a video with these updates. So it's also not inert, so it's not neutral. It naturally has potassium, and that means you might need to have a custom nutrient solution to provide the amount of nutrients you want for your plant. So that makes it a bit more tricky. You know, if it was a substrate that is inert or neutral, let's say like expanded clay pebbles, if you washed out the nutrient coating, you could just put the nutrients you want for the plant, and that's it. But here it naturally has a potassium, so you need to take that into consideration. And again, in the hydroponic store, there's probably some nutrient solution that are designed for people using Coco coir. So that's pretty much it for the hydroponic substrate. So now we just reviewed 3 of them. So there's lots more, but that was kind of intense, so I got lazy and I just stopped after the 3rd one. So I'll make another video with reviews of the other one. So let me know if you like that structure of first understanding what is the material itself, then seeing advantages, disadvantages, and then moving on to the next. Okay, so if you like the video, if it provided some value to you, leave a like, comment, subscribe to follow the journey. And also, please don't hesitate to give me some feedback, because I'm learning alongside you, so I don't know everything and I'm not an expert. I'm doing the research and trying to share what I learned. So let me know what you think of it, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.